I've never considered myself a particularly active person, but I do enjoy working out and running every now and then to stay in decent shape. My friend Jay and I usually exercise together, as he's always been in great shape and helps push me to improve. Running with Jay made it easier for me to stay consistent, and over time we developed a routine. Since my neighborhood was well lit and considered safe, we often ran at night when the air was cooler and the streets were quieter. It became something we looked forward to, a way to unwind, challenge ourselves, and talk about anything on our minds. However, that all changed after one terrifying experience that made us swear never to run there again. What started as a normal run quickly turned into something out of a nightmare, and to this day, I still get chills thinking about it. My neighborhood has a unique layout. A main road runs through it, with several smaller roads branching off, all eventually looping back to the main road. At the end of this road, there's a dirt path that stretches into open farmland and larger, more isolated properties. This setup made it an ideal place for long runs, as we could take different routes to keep things interesting. One night, Jay and I decided to switch things up by running from my house onto a wooded path that connected to one of the side roads. From there, we planned to reconnect with the main road, follow it to the dirt path, and then return home. It was a more complex route, but we took it to push ourselves as our usual path had started to feel too easy. We had no idea that this decision would lead us into one of the most unsettling experiences of our lives. The run started off like any other. Jay and I jogged side by side, casually chatting about high school drama and whatever else was on our minds. The night was cool, the path was familiar, and everything felt normal. As we made our way through the wooded trail, the only sounds were our footsteps and our own breathing. However, after a few minutes, we began to hear something else. Faint footsteps behind us. At first, we brushed it off, assuming it was just another runner or someone walking through the neighborhood. The path was commonly used, so it didn't seem unusual. But as we continued, something felt off. The footsteps never faded, and no matter how fast or slow we moved, they matched our pace exactly. At first, we tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just someone keeping their distance, we reasoned. But the longer it went on, the more uneasy we became. If we sped up, the footsteps quickened. If we slowed down, they did too. It was as if whoever was behind us was deliberately mirroring our movements. Jay and I exchanged nervous glances, but didn't say anything. We both wanted to believe it was just a coincidence, but deep down, I could feel the tension growing. By the time we neared the end of the wooded path, my heart was pounding. Not from the run, but from the creeping sense of unease that I couldn't shake. Then, as we finally stepped onto the well-lit road, the footsteps suddenly stopped. Jay and I immediately turned around, expecting to see someone behind us, but there was no one. The path we had just exited was empty, shrouded in darkness beneath the trees. We stood there for a moment, catching our breath and exchanging confused looks. It didn't make sense. If someone had been following us, they should still have been visible, yet there was nothing. A strange, uneasy silence settled over us, but we forced ourselves to shake it off. "Probably just another runner who turned off somewhere," Jay said with a shrug. I nodded, trying to convince myself he was right. Without another word, we continued our run, following the side road that would lead us back to the main road. But something about that silence behind us still gnawed at me. As we made our way toward the main road, I tried to push the strange experience out of my mind. The well-lit streets and familiar houses were reassuring, and for a while, it almost felt like nothing had happened. Jay and I picked up the pace, deciding to push ourselves a little harder as we neared the dirt path at the edge of the neighborhood. Unlike the main road, this path had no streetlights, just a narrow trail lined with trees on both sides. It was always darker and eerier than the rest of our route, but we had run it plenty of times before without issue. Still, as we stepped onto the path and the glow of the streetlights faded behind us, I couldn't shake the lingering unease in my chest. We ran about a mile down the dirt path, our breathing steady and our footsteps the only sound cutting through the still night. The deeper we went, the more isolated it felt, with the towering trees on either side blocking out the moonlight. Just as we were about to turn back, something caught my eye. A dark figure darting into the trees on the left side of the path. My body tensed immediately. It was quick, barely visible in the dim light, but I knew I had seen something. I slowed down slightly and turned to Jay. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice lower than usual. He glanced at me, then at the trees before shaking his head. "Dude, you're just paranoid. We've been running for a while, and it's dark. Your eyes are probably playing tricks on you." His words were meant to be reassuring, but they didn't make me feel any better. I wanted to believe Jay was right, that I was just imagining things, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. Still, I didn't want to argue, so I forced myself to nod and kept running. We passed the spot where I had seen the figure without incident, which made me start doubting myself even more. Maybe I really had imagined it. But just as we neared the point where the dirt path met the main road again, a sudden rustling sound came from behind us, louder and closer than before. Both Jay and I froze in place. Slowly, we turned around, and that's when we saw him. Standing in the middle of the dirt road, about 20 feet behind us, was a figure dressed in a black hoodie, ripped and filthy khaki pants, and dark shoes. He wasn't moving. He wasn't even facing us. He just stood there, motionless, his back turned toward us. A wave of fear crashed over me, making my stomach twist. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Jay took a cautious step forward and called out, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" But before he could finish his sentence, the figure started laughing. It wasn't a normal laugh. It was an awful, cackling, almost inhuman sound that sent chills down my spine. The eerie laughter echoed through the trees, seeming to grow louder the longer it went on. Jay and I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to process what was happening. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the laughter stopped. The figure slowly turned around to face us, and that was when I saw his face. His skin was unnaturally pale, almost ghostly under the faint moonlight, and his wide, unblinking eyes locked onto ours with an intensity that made my breath hitch. His expression wasn't one of anger or malice. It was worse. It was pure, unsettling amusement, as if he were enjoying our fear. The sight of him sent a jolt of terror through me, and for a brief moment I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were cemented to the ground. Then Jay, without saying a word, gave me a quick glance, the kind of look that said, "Run," and that was all I needed. In an instant, we both turned and sprinted as fast as our legs would carry us. We ran harder than we ever had before, our breaths coming in ragged gasps as our feet pounded against the dirt path. Adrenaline surged through my body, pushing me forward even though my muscles burned with exhaustion. Behind us, the laughter started again, louder this time, wilder, as if the figure was chasing after us. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to see if he was following, if he was getting closer. All I could focus on was running, putting as much distance as possible between us and that thing standing in the road. The moment we reached the main road, we didn't slow down. We kept running, tearing through the neighborhood, and our only goal was to make it back to my house. By the time we finally reached my house, my lungs were on fire, and my legs felt like they were about to give out. I barely made it to the side of my yard before doubling over and throwing up from the sheer exhaustion and panic. Jay was right beside me, bent over, trying to catch his breath. Without a second thought, I rushed inside through the back door, locking it behind me, before running to check every window and entrance. Jay did the same, shutting the garage doors and making sure we were completely sealed in. We sat there for what felt like hours, our backs against the wall, trying to process what had just happened. Neither of us spoke for a long time, but we both knew one thing for certain. We were never running in my neighborhood at night again.